paradise must be won each day and each night, through darkness and through light. Cry it out to the world, spread the word, spread the word, spread the word, oh man, spread the word of Islam. Every difficulty faced in our lives.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Abdul Bary Yahya and I will be your host for the series on the science of Hadith. And today, specifically, we will be speaking about the scholars of Hadith, some of the other scholars of the Sunan and the scholars of the Sahih Hadith and their collections. We have the first collections that were collected in relation to that which is authentic only. We mentioned in previous episodes that it was Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim. If you hear them, we know that's authentic. The difference between Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, Sahih Bukhari tends to concentrate more on, it's organized more in terms of the benefits that you can extract from are more fiqh benefits, organized into fiqh chapters. As for Sahih Muslim, it's not organized according to the different chapters. It is in terms of organization, but the chapter headings and so forth were not put there by Imam Muslim himself. He just gathered the hadith together and put them together. So if you open Sahih Muslim now, you will see that there are headings for each of the different chapters. But it wasn't Imam Muslim who actually put that there. It was Al-Imam An-Nawawi rahimahullah. When he did his commentary on Sahih Muslim, he fixed, or he put the chapter headings there. But as for Imam Bukhari, his chapter heading was actually his opinion concerning different rulings in fiqh and different rulings in Islamic issues. So you will find Imam Bukhari's fiqh in his chapter heading. If you want to know what Imam Bukhari's opinion is in certain issues, then you look at the chapter headings of Imam al-Bukhari's book. Imam Bukhari's book, he has the hadith there, but he also has what's called al-Mu'allaq. Al-Mu'allaq is a hadith that Imam Bukhari did not mention the complete chain. If he did not mention the complete chain, or he mentioned this as a part of his chapter heading, then it's authentic up to he who has mentioned. But whatever he leaves in terms of the unconnected chain, then he's telling us to verify it. But Imam Bukhari gave clues of whether this hadith was authentic or not. And this has been recognized and clarified to us by Imam Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani rahimahullah, one of the great scholars of hadith that came later on, who made or who put together his commentary on Sahih Bukhari. And he mentioned that in his commentary and also in other books related to Sahih Bukhari, when he clarified all that which was not connected, he said, if you find a hadith in Sahih Bukhari that Imam al-Bukhari mentions in the active voice, meaning he says that Imam Bukhari says such and such people said it, then it's authentic to that person. If he says in the passive voice, it was said, or it has been reported, then you have to check the chain itself. Not all of it is necessarily authentic. If he says it has been narrated, but if he mentions it in the active voice, then you know that's authentic, and this has been checked upon by and mentioned to us by Imam Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani. So, Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim were collections of hadith that the intention of the collector, the intention of the compiler, was to compile authentic hadith only. And that's why, and that's what they did. The people who came later on amongst the Sunan at-Tirmidhi, Sunan Abi Dawud, Sunan al-Nasa'i, Sunan Ibn Majah, these are known as the Sunan. The Sunan are collections, the compilers collected a hadith. These were jawami', means jami', meaning these are books that compiled all phases of Islam, or all aspects of Islam, not just specific sets only, but they're known as reference sources in hadith. The Sunan, the compilers did not have the intention to collect only authentic hadith. Al-Imam Abu Dawud rahimahullah, for example, he collected his hadith with the intention, he's saying everything that I have mentioned in my book are considered usable or acceptable. I mean, people have used it, but that doesn't mean it's authentic, because some of them, he declared it himself to be unauthentic himself. But he put it there because people used it. And why didn't he collect just authentic hadith? Because the purpose of his collection was not to just collect authentic hadith. It was to collect hadith that people used in terms of, as their proof for fiqh and other issues, and to clarify whether this is authentic or not. And so everything that Imam Abu Dawud mentioned that's authentic, he says, if I don't say anything, it's acceptable. Unless I mention it, it's weak. So some people, if you do not read Sunan Abi Dawud carefully, and you misunderstand his words, you might say, okay, since he didn't say anything about this particular hadith, does that mean this hadith is acceptable? No, not necessarily. Because there are some hadith that Imam Bukhari mentioned it without classifying it or telling that it's weak. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's acceptable. And the reason being, some people misunderstand this. They don't realize Imam Abu Dawud, rahimahullah, sometimes he mentions that this particular hadith, because of this narrator, is weak. Because of such and such narrator, this is a weak hadith. And then he will mention another hadith with the same narrator. In that hadith, the same narrator, but he will not say anything. So, by default, do we say, okay, since he didn't say anything about this hadith, it's acceptable? No. The reason why he didn't repeat himself to say that this is unacceptable is because he already did it before, in the previous hadith. He didn't repeat it again. So if you want to know if this hadith is authentic or not, according to Imam Abu Dawud, you don't just say, okay, since he's quiet, he doesn't say anything about this hadith, does that mean it's acceptable? No. Did he say anything about the narrators before mentioning this hadith? If he did, that is his ruling that that hadith is weak. That hadith is weak. The hadith that came afterwards is weak because he's already spoken about that narrator, and that narrator came again. Why? He didn't want to waste his time mentioning it again. So, the collection of Imam Abu Dawud rahimahullah is a collection that comprises of authentic hadith and hasan hadith, hadith that are acceptable, and they also comprises also of weak hadith. So if you are reading, or if somebody says, this hadith is in Sunan Abi Dawud, ask them again, take another step. Don't just say, okay, since it's Sunan Abi Dawud, it's hadith, I'm going to take it. No. Just because it's in Sunan Abi Dawud does not mean it's authentic, because the intention of the compiler, Imam Abu Dawud rahimahullah, was not to compile only authentic hadith. So what is special about Sunan Abi Dawud in comparison to the other Sunan and the other books of hadith? The thing that's special about Sunan Abi Dawud is that Sunan Abi Dawud is, in terms of fiqh, it's one of the most organized, best organized book from a fiqh standpoint. From a fiqh standpoint. So if you want good organization, then look through Sunan Abi Dawud. Another great scholar of hadith is Al-Imam At-Tirmidhi. Al-Imam At-Tirmidhi was one of the students of Imam Bukhari, and he studied also from the other great scholars of hadith during his time. Al-Imam Bukhari rahimahullah, Imam At-Tirmidhi, Imam Muslim and so forth. All of these were from the area of present-day Russian republics. And so many of the great scholars of Hadith came from that particular area. And Imam at-Tirmidhi, rahimahullah, his book, he put together with the same intention, but he added a few things to it. It's a complete collection, that's why people call it Al-Jami' at-Tirmidhi. Yes, the word Jami' means it's a complete collection, not like the collection of Imam Malik in his Muwatta. It wasn't a total complete collection comprising or having all the topics related to Islam, whether it be Tawheed, Aqidah, Fiqh and so forth. No, it wasn't. It was mainly Fiqh. But when Sunan at-Tirmidhi, Sunan Abi Dawud and the other Sunan, these are complete reference and collections. And so, Imam at-Tirmidhi rahimahullah, what's so special about his collection? It's probably one of the most beneficial of all the collections of a hadith in terms of the many benefits that you can extract from it. First of all, you have fiqh benefits, because he mentions the opinions of the scholars in there also. The opinions, for example, he'll put a hadith and he'll mention all the different narrators, the different companions who narrated that same hadith. So he also concentrates on the chain and the narrators. Like Imam Muslim did the same thing. Imam Muslim, rahimahullah, he concentrated mainly on the chains and also the different narrations. Imam at-Tirmidhi, rahimahullah, he concentrated, he has that also. And in his introduction, he clarifies to us the different rulings related to what we call mustalah hadith, which is the terminologies of hadith. And the terminology of hadith, this branch, which is known as mustalah hadith, is a specific branch putting down the specific rulings related to clarification of how to determine whether a hadith is authentic or not. So it's one of the first books to have mustalah hadith in it, and he is one of the first ones to have to classify a hadith and use it abundantly as to use the word hasan to describe a hadith. So inshallah we will break, and after these short messages we'll be right back.
Spread the word of Islam.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Abdul Bary Yahya, and welcome back to our show on the science of hadith. And we have been speaking about some of the great scholars of hadith and their collections. And the last we spoke about was Imam at-Tirmidhi rahimahullah. And Imam at-Tirmidhi rahimahullah was one of the great scholars of hadith, and his compilation of hadith is one of the most beneficial of all the compilations. Imam at-Tirmidhi rahimahullah himself, he mentioned that if you have my collection in your house, if you have this collection of hadith, it's like you're having a prophet speaking, a speaking prophet in your house. So subhanallah, anytime you have these collections of hadith in your house, it's like having a speaking prophet in your house. Because whatever you read, these are narrations that have come from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So what you are reading are actual words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that have come down to us through the great narrators of hadith, through the great scholars of hadith that have come to us. So it's like having a speaking prophet, as Imam at-Tirmidhi rahimahullah mentioned about his collection. But of course, this is with all the collections of the hadith. Any authentic hadith, these are hadith, words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They have been compiled and they have been preserved by the great scholars of hadith, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised their preservation. And so, Imam at-Tirmidhi's book, we were speaking about Imam at-Tirmidhi's book, and we said that it's one of the most beneficial of all. And he has also a section on ilal, it's illah. And so these are principles also and defects that he's mentioned. And of course he sat with Imam Bukhari rahimahullah, one of the great scholars of hadith, and that was his teacher in terms of his ilal and also many hadith. And so Imam Tirmidhi rahimahullah, his collection compiles many hadith, but again, most of the hadith are authentic. Most of the hadith are sahih, but there are hasan hadith, which are acceptable hadith. You can use them for proof in legislation, in fiqh issues, in fiqh affairs, and in other issues related to tawheed and so forth, if they are hasan and they are authentic or sahih. But the terminology that was used by Imam at-Tirmidhi, a lot of people misunderstand. When Imam at-Tirmidhi says something is hasan, they think that Imam at-Tirmidhi was very lax in his grading of a hadith. But when you read the introduction, you read his introduction, which we'll actually put in the back of his Jami', he mentions his definition for a Hasan. One of the definitions that he mentions for a Hasan hadith is a hadith in which some scholars have classified it as authentic and others have classified it as non-authentic. That's one definition. Another definition is the definition of Hasan that we ourselves are used to, that have become standardized after the scholars, after Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani rahimahullah, and some of the scholars during his time and a little bit before, they standardized the term Hasan to mean a hadith that fulfill all of the conditions, like connected chain, the precision in memory, reliability and trustworthiness, and it doesn't contradict any other hadith, and it also doesn't have any defects that will affect the hadith. So, but the Hasan hadith is just a precision, is just a little bit less. So instead of the narrator having exceptional memory, he has a very good memory, but not exceptional. So that's just very, very minor, so much so that it's considered still acceptable. That is the standard definition of a Hasan. But Imam al-Tirmidhi, remember, he's the first one. So when he says something as Hasan, he said, what I mean is that some scholars have said it's authentic, some scholars have said it's not authentic, and I'm just telling you that they differ over the verification or authenticity of this hadith. So Imam al-Tirmidhi says this is Hasan because of that reason. And if it's because of that reason, is he saying that it is acceptable? No, that's what he means. It's not some accept it, some don't accept it. I'm just telling you that. So that does not mean that Imam al-Tirmidhi was lenient. That was his definition, not the definition that was standardized later, but that also was another definition that he mentioned also, that he could mean that when he says that also. Remember, he's one of the first one to use that, very often. And so some people criticize or misunderstand the terminology that's Hasan. So Imam al-Tirmidhi, if you see a hadith that Imam al-Tirmidhi says, okay, this is hadith as-sahih, then that's his classification to tell you it's authentic. But if he says it's Hasan, does that necessarily mean it's Hasan in terms of the standard that we know? No, because he himself said so. Because that possibility of being just him mentioning the differences between the scholars is still there. And so some people say that he's very lax in grading hadith and so forth because they misunderstand that point. So what do you do when you see a hadith in Sunan al-Tirmidhi? Remember, we said that these collections in the Sunan, they are not collections in which the compilers of these collections, they didn't have the intention to collect only authentic hadith. So if you hear a hadith in Sunan al-Tirmidhi, you have to again take it another step and say, who authenticated this hadith now? So it might be Imam Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani rahimahullah, it might be Shaykh al-Albani rahimahullah, it might be al-Imam al-Dhahabi, it might be one of the great scholars who came later on who authenticated the hadith in Sunan al-Tirmidhi. We say alhamdulillah, we take it. If it's authenticated by such and such scholars. But just because it's in Sunan al-Tirmidhi does not mean it's authentic. Another collection is the collection of Imam al-Nasa'i rahimahullah. His is Sunan al-Nasa'i. Of all the Sunan, Sunan al-Tirmidhi, Sunan Abi Dawood, Sunan al-Nasa'i, and Sunan Ibn Majah, of all the Sunan, the most authentic of the Sunan is Sunan al-Nasa'i. Imam al-Nasa'i rahimahullah, he was a great scholar of hadith, known for his piety and righteousness, as they all were. They were all known for their piety and righteousness. But specifically, Al-Imam al-Nasa'i rahimahullah, his collection is considered one of the most authentic of all the Sunan, of all the 4 Sunan, because it was actually a very large collection. It was a very large collection, and then one of the Umara, one of the princes and one of the leaders, he said, it's a large collection and we can't really differentiate between authentic and unauthentic, because when he collected this large collection of his, he did not intend it to be just authentic. So what he did was, he was asked to do a summarized version of his big collection And that's why it was the chosen ahadith. It was the ahadith that were sifted out amongst his major collection. So it was actually a summary of the remainder of the hadith that he considered to be authentic. And so that's why it's one of the most authentic of the Sunan an-Nasa'i. But at the same time also, there are very few weak hadith in Sunan an-Nasa'i, less than the other collections. But still, the compiler who compiled this, Imam an-Nasa'i, did not compile it with the intention of only collecting authentic hadith only. So that's why if we see something in the Sunan, even though the majority, especially in comparison to the other Sunan, authentic, still there are some hadith which many scholars of Islam who will come afterwards have scrutinized them and have deemed them to be weak. And notice when we say a weak hadith, you have to be very careful in saying a weak hadith is not a hadith. Because just like it's not permissible for us to use a hadith that is considered fabricated or very weak, it's also not permissible for us to deny a hadith if it is a hadith. And that's why the scholars of Islam, they were very careful in calling a hadith, this is a weak hadith, meaning in the chain and appearance, but they never said that this was fabricated. So you do not say a weak hadith is fabricated. A weak hadith is a weak hadith because the possibility is still there that it might be authentic. The possibility, and they're so careful. It's not permissible for you to deny anything that is a hadith and say that it's not hadith. It's not permissible. So that's why if you're not sure, say it's a weak hadith. Unless you're sure that this has been fabricated, then you say it's fabricated. Otherwise, don't say it's fabricated. If it's a weak hadith, just say it's a weak hadith. Leave it the way it is. Because it's not permissible for us to deny something the Prophet ﷺ said. And you can't deny something that the Prophet ﷺ also possibly might have said. Just say it's a weak hadith. I mean, it might not be acceptable in terms of using it for legislation and so forth, but still, we do not deny it. So the next is Sunan ibn Majah. Al-Imam ibn Majah, rahimahullah, is one of the great scholars of hadith, also known for his piety and righteousness. His collection of hadith, though, it's one of the 6 major collections, but in comparison to all the other collections, of all the 6, probably it has more weak hadith than most of the other collections. And it has even some fabricated hadith. So specifically, if you see that Imam Ibn Majah has narrated hadith and the other people in the Sunan did not narrate, most likely it's a weak hadith. Most likely, not all the time, but of all the Sunan, in terms of the strength of the hadith, Sunan Ibn Majah, probably the weakest of them in terms of authenticity. And so that's all the time that we have for today. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept our deeds and to increase our iman and to teach us that which we do not know and to help us apply that which we do know and to make our deeds sincere for His sake. وَجَزَاكُمُ اللَّهُ خَيْرًا وَصَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَى نَبِيِّنَا مُحَمَّدٍ وَعَلَى آلِهِ وَصَحْبِهِ أَجْمَعِينَ.
Spread the word, oh man.